Hello, hello. Hi everybody. Here I am. Good morning, Allie and Nancy. Nice to be with you all. Nice to arrive this morning. Deirdre, good morning. Welcome. I've already been very busy this morning, so it's nice to settle and pause. Let's breathe together. Exhaling through the mouth is underrated. And I invite you all, when you wake up in a moment in your life and you notice, you wake up from the dream of being identified with thought and you become present again, and maybe you notice stress or tension in the body, that you do a deep diaphragmatic breath, which means allowing the belly to expand with the intake of your breath. Like your belly is a balloon blowing up when you inhale, and then on the exhale, allow it to just come out through the mouth with a sigh. And with sound is even better. It might feel uncomfortable at first, and it really helps the nervous system. Yes, Allie, it has been quite a while. And see, look what happens as I'm just kind of tuning in and modeling this. Then I yawned, which is a relaxation response, which is the parasympathetic nervous system kicking in, which is what we want, because we spend most of our lives in sympathetic fight or flight response. Welcome, Madeline. Glad to see you. So, how many of you yawned when I yawned? I love how that happens. I remember being a kid in elementary school, and we had these kid magazines. It was like a science magazine or something. And there was a big picture on the page of a kid yawning, like mouth wide open, mid-yawn. And the caption or the story was something like, "Does this picture make you yawn?" And it did. And this was a very long time ago, and I still remember that. Of course, now I think we have more of an understanding of why that occurs. Oh, okay, yawning wants to happen. I always wake up very early, but I actually got up very early. So here we are. I'm excited about this topic, toxic shame. So I've stumbled upon this fairly recently, and it hit really deep for me. So, of course, when that happens, the way I teach, the way I practice, the way I work, with others, and everything I do, it's all related to my own journey. And, I'm a living experiment of, what I incorporate, what I'm a sponge. I learn, I incorporate, I discern, I see what resonates, what doesn't, what works, what doesn't work, and then I teach. and I share. It's one of my gifts. And so that's how toxic shame is here as our topic today. I'm actually going to get the book because I have it here by John Bradshaw. And yeah, so this is, where this talk stems from, as well as John Bradshaw did a PBS series in the early 90s, I think, or 80s. But he wrote this, Healing the Shame That Binds You. And it's all about what is toxic shame, how does it run your life without you knowing it, where it comes from. So we're going to break this down in this live stream today. Ooh, interesting. Madeline, hi J.E. So has anybody heard of John Bradshaw? Besides maybe if I mentioned it recently. He is a pioneer of inner child healing. And if you are, my age or older, then likely you've heard of him along the way. But yeah, he's kind of, exactly, Allie, 80s, 90s. Deirdre, Madeline, new to you. We have 2 Allies, awesome. Good morning, Drazel, shalom. So, what I want to talk about today is why is this important? Why is this applicable? What it is, and if this is something that runs you, and it runs you. If you have toxic shame, it runs you. Then you can start seeing it, right? So if you are new to me, I'm Natalie, spiritual life coach and Reiki master teacher. And, in my coaching, one of the main benefits of coaching is to be able to become aware of things that you weren't aware of before, or seeing things in ways that you hadn't seen them before. And my role as a coach is to guide people and support people in that. And so how that applies to toxic shame is if this is a blind spot for you, you don't even know that it's there and that it's running you. And, you can't change what you don't even know exists. One of my favorite analogies, just generally, that relates is, if you think about a fish, it doesn't have a concept of water. I mean, I know that it probably doesn't have much concepts anyway, but being a bit creative, a fish has no concept of water until it's taken out of water. And just like us, yes, we have science and things, we know about air and oxygen, but this is a fairly new development in our history. I think, this concept of knowing about the science of molecules in air and oxygen and all of that is only a few hundred years old. So before that, people didn't know about air. People didn't even know about, the earth being a globe or whatever. So it's there's no concept of it. We thought the earth was flat. There was no concept of that until the blind spot. There was a light shown on that by experience or knowledge. So same with this and same with everything. Same with all of these things that we teach, and learn here. And the awareness allows space for something different to occur. So the thing with this toxic shame, for me personally, I mean, sure, I knew I had shame, but reading this book and diving deeper and listening to John Bradshaw's series, I listened to the whole 10-part series in the past month. And if you want links to that, you can send me a message. It's on YouTube. It really opened me up to, so what happens with toxic shame is it becomes your identity. So if you have this running you and you don't know it, well, that's a pretty big blind spot. So we'll dive in further now. So we all know, like, conceptually, generally, you know, what is guilt, what is shame, what is the difference? You know, shame is a feeling, it's a sensation that you can experience in the body. The classic distinction between guilt and shame is guilt, I did something wrong. Shame, toxic shame, I am wrong. There's something wrong with me. So how many of you can relate to internalizing, you know, not just I did something wrong or I made a mistake, but to I am wrong, I am a mistake, there's something wrong with me, there's some fault within me. It's great you're out of the bowl, Madeline, however you've gotten here. Hello, B, 1000%. Hi, Lynn. Trish, good morning. Hi, Marcy. Yes, Lolita. Deirdre, the healing has begun. So that's, again, why I bring this. You cannot heal what you aren't aware of existing. And the one of the main dangers of toxic shame is it sounds like truth. It sounds true and real and authentic and sounds like your voice, and it's not. It is conditioning. And see, the thing is, you know, I'll make a blanket assumption because we're all here in Insight Timer, that we're all, you know, on a healing journey of a certain level of awareness. And so most of us are aware of, like, the classic, limiting beliefs and subconscious programs, and I'm not enough, and I'm not lovable, and I don't belong, and I don't fit in, and I'm not good enough, blank enough, smart enough. And so those are pretty well known, and it's like, okay, but what's the foundation underneath all that? And I believe that's what this toxic shame drives that. And John Bradshaw, I believe he is the one that invented this term toxic shame. Lalita. So you're not alone, and we're going to dive into where this comes from. And yes, it's childhood. And you know, John Bradshaw says in his book, like, really 98% of humans have this. You know, there's a very small, like 2 to 5% of, well, let's just say Western households are healthy. You know, I don't know about tribal cultures and things and whatever, but we'll just stick with, like, modern whatever, not necessarily Western, but modern culture and families and upbringings. He said 95 to 98% of people grow up in dysfunctional homes that then create toxic shame. Hi, Kathleen. Yeah, and that's why I want to bring voice to this, because even the word shame, it's like, I don't want to look at that. I don't want to talk about it. There's this natural tendency, like, I mean, there's a part of me that I notice that's like, I don't even want to say that I have shame about myself. And isn't that funny? Because that's That's the crux of the thing. But yeah, it feels shameful to even acknowledge that I have shame. Or there's a part that feels that way, let's say. So Bradshaw talks about healthy shame versus toxic shame. And I want to really dive into this because it's something that has taken stretching my mind. And it's something that I had no concept of. So it felt like unfamiliar and I was like, but I don't get it. Like it wasn't landing because it was so foreign. So I really want to slow down on this distinction. So the toxic shame is shame that becomes your identity or part of your identity. And then it becomes the lens in which you see yourself in the world. It's a paradigm. It becomes a paradigm. So again, it's like I am wrong, not I did something wrong, and what's wrong with me, and I'm intrinsically flawed somehow. So when he talks about healthy shame, he says that is an indicator that we need in our lives, like as far as being a human in like the social society and culture and communication with others and relationships with others and value systems and all of that. So healthy shame is about behavior, not identity. It signals misalignment. It's specific and temporary. It's kind of like helps us to know when we've acted outside of our values. So then, it's almost like a guardrail. It leads us to make a shift, apologize, make a change, and then it's temporary. So it's like good information. It protects boundaries. Healthy shame helps us adjust. Versus toxic shame it's like healthy shame is sort of on the surface, and then toxic shame is we internalize it and we bring that down and we make it personal. And it's the shame spiral, it becomes that, and then we just turn against ourselves and beat ourselves up, attack ourselves, make it about, intrinsically, I am defective, what's wrong with me? Wonderful, Drazel. Yeah, so healthy shame will lead to like a correction in your actions. Like, oh, that's good information. I'll do things differently next time. Toxic shame leads to rumination, self-obsession, spiraling, overthinking, and then it becomes about our identity. So, as a small example, so say you interrupt somebody in a conversation and they're like, oh, excuse me, I wasn't finished talking. The healthy shame would be like, oh, I interrupted them. Like, that's good information. I'll not do that again. Toxic shame will then make it personal. Oh, I'm a bad person. What's wrong with me? I'm annoying. Why? I'm a bad listener. I'm spiritual. Why wasn't I being present enough? Can anyone relate to that? So healthy shame will be, like I said, like a guardrail of like, oh, that wasn't aligned. Toxic shame, it's like a weapon that it turns back on yourself. So if it helps you adjust, if it's like good feedback, if it helps you move on, healthy, if it makes you turn on yourself, stay stuck, start, ruminating, overthinking about yourself, and then you make it personal, about like a personal attack on your identity, that's the toxic shame. So does that help distinguish between the two? Because we don't want to throw all shame out the window. Hi Barbara, great. So now we want to look at where this comes from, and no surprise, just like everything else, wonderful childhood upbringing, which, I speak of this often. It's important. It needs to be said, because this is why it occurs. It's not because there's something wrong with us. It's not because we're unique. It's because of the developmental years, the formative years from birth to 7-8 years old. The brain and the nervous system, the body of that being is so very different, than we are as adults here. Everything has solidified. Yes, we can change and all of that, but it's a very unique time of life for a being, because it's like we're a sponge. We are a literal sponge. We have no self-identity. We have no discernment. We have no ego. And so everything that is said around us becomes our internal programs, and this shame voice in our head isn't even ours. Yes, B, and it is possible. So it's difficult, and everything is possible. So I stand for possibility. I always say in my coaching sessions, if this comes up, if somebody feels stuck, like something isn't possible, I always give this example. If one person in the history of humanity has done XYZ or healed from XYZ, then it is literally possible. So, yes, it's difficult and it's possible. So this toxic shame pattern comes from, and this is not to blame parents, so, and it's also not to condone anyone's behavior either. It's just a noticing, right? So if your emotions were dismissed, if you were mocked, if you were punished, all of the things that we all know and have heard, like, boys don't cry, like, children should be seen and not heard, what's wrong with you, why are you crying so much? I remember my mom saying, so one of my sisters was born with some mental issues, which of course we didn't even see it as that at the time. We just saw it as there's something wrong with her. Why is she crying every day? Why is she, the ways that she is? And so of course she was shamed for that. Love being conditional. How many of you had, honestly, I think there are very few instances in the world, and of course it is there, so it is possible, where there is true love. True love that is unconditional. That is love. Saying unconditional love is like, you don't even need to say unconditional, because that's a part of it, but we have all these different ideas and concepts. So, quote, love, which isn't love, was conditional. It was given or shown based on merit, based on action, based on behavior, instead of just given unconditionally. So caregivers, if they were parents, or some people were raised by other family members or other people, caregiving was inconsistent, intrusive, unavailable. And so, we learn as children, again, not that I did something wrong, but there's something wrong with me. And yeah, again, this is not about blaming, because the parents and the caregivers didn't get it either. So you can't give what you don't even know is missing. And it's like, well, then how far back do you take the blame? So it's just pointless to do that. And again, it's not saying that condoning abuse or anything is okay. No. And we don't just want to say it's their fault and leave it there, because then we become disempowered and victims in that. Then there's nowhere to go from there. So it's just about noticing, it's just about seeing where this comes from. So then these voices, the critical voices, then become our internal voice, and then that's when the toxic shame starts and solidifies. And then as children, our parents are God, basically. They're our entire world. And so we must rely on them to literally stay alive. And so the parent and the caregiver cannot do wrong, because that would threaten our whole existence. So instead, like as children, it's part of instinct, it's built in. There is no possibility that they could ever do something wrong. So then we turn it on ourselves and say, well, it must be me. There must be something wrong with me. Wonderful, Drazel. That's a wonderful calling and intention. Yeah. So this is not like, there's a lot of different dynamics here. Hi, Nicole. I remember that. Is that in The Road Less Traveled, maybe? When Peck talks about that. And yeah, the scapegoat child becomes, that they're the most sensitive child. So all of the shit, all of the unconscious stuff, that child is like a sponge and receives all of that. And I do want to say too, like any family with addiction, any family with, abuse of any kind, everyone is going to have the toxic shame. So, of course, I don't want to point fingers and blame. And if you have toxic shame, there is a very large chance your parents did or do, or your caregivers do also. So it's just about how all of this creates this identity. So if you're just kind of trying to feel into this and see like, how can I know if this shows up for me like in real time? So here's some ways that toxic shame manifests. It manifests as chronic self-doubt, having a harsh inner critic or inner dialogue, having difficulty receiving love or praise or compliments. I work with many people, and we will work with that. You know, can you accept a compliment? What is that like on the inside for you? So if somebody has toxic shame, and not to say if you have self-doubt that means 100% you have the toxic shame, but you know, I'd say generally yes. You might overfunction. How many of you overfunction? How many of you are perfectionists, people pleasers? How many of you overthink interactions and wish you would have said something or done something differently? How many of you have stayed in an unhealthy dynamic, if it's a relationship or a job or a friendship or a family system? How many of you hide, withdraw, or isolate? Or how many of you like overfunction and don't get help and support? So the thing is, as we all know, we recreate our childhoods in our adult relationships. So you may be attracted to people that will reinforce these toxic shame patterns. You might end up feeling less than and or too much. So I'd say like the healthy shame keeps us balanced, and the toxic shame we go into I'm worse than everybody, or I'm less than, or I'm too much, I need to hold back, I can't speak. You might notice in like a social dynamic, maybe if you talk too much later, you're like, oh my God, I said too much. You know, I talked too long. I overshared all of it. I mean, me too, y'all. Interesting, Madeline. So I would ask you, do you feel like maybe that could be a toxic shame pattern showing up? So we'll look at, like, again, a little bit deeper how this could happen in real time. So there will be a trigger. There will be something that happens. Maybe you were rejected, or maybe if somebody gives you the silent treatment, maybe you make a mistake. Like, whew. That's a big one. What's your relationship like with making mistakes? And not, you know, it might be just you making a mistake that only you see and notice. That's one level, and yes, the shame can come out then. And the other level is other people correcting you. Other people, like at work or something, or even in a relationship. Being told you made a mistake. So what happens when these things come about? There is an internal collapse. So can you relate to that feeling? It is, and that's a wonderful way to word it, an internal collapse on the inside. Truth telling, totally, Nicole. In toxic family dynamics, you cannot tell the truth. Marcy, you've experienced that, yes. Hi, Faz. So then you have the trigger, you have that internal collapse. It wasn't like, oh, I did something wrong. It's, I am wrong. What's wrong with me? How could I do that? I should have known better. I'm stupid. I'm an idiot. Or then the negative self-talk. So you see you start making it about who you are as a human being because of a rejection, a mistake, or even like hyper monitoring other people's tone, like if you're living together or whatever, or even at work, like those sorts of relationships, somebody might be quieter than usual, then you might make up, what did I do? Hey, Jenny. So then comes the coping strategy. Over-explain, fix, perform, over-perform, over-apologize, or completely withdraw. Oh, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. How many of you over-apologize? And see, the thing is, that feels like, so you're doing that because you feel this internal collapse inside and you're wanting to feel better. So there may be a small part that is actually about the thing, and most of it is about trying to regulate yourself. So you may get a temporary relief, but it's part of this cycle. And then it's like, this is who I am. Yeah, apologizing, Madeline, if somebody runs into you, or Trish, they're having a meeting, it must be about me. Hi, Mira. Deirdre, you can relate. Hi, Leah Joy. Well, Leah Joy, and I would say, I said this a few minutes ago, I don't know if you were here, is like we recreate our childhood dynamics in our adult relationships. So I would imagine that if all of this is landing, that it didn't just start with the marriage, that likely there's unhealed dynamics from childhood. What was I just gonna say? Anyway, it'll come back if I'm meant to remember it. So does this feel like, if this is like the first time you're hearing all this and you can relate, I imagine maybe it's you're having some clarity, some ahas. And again, the point of this is so you can start noticing this, not to shame yourself for it. So I'm gonna set down a rule. You cannot shame yourself with this information. But seriously, I've been talking about this a lot lately, this sword of awareness. It's a very powerful sword to have all of this beautiful, wonderful awareness that we have here. We don't want to turn the sword on ourselves. And toxic shame will try to do that. So this is where you get to break and start breaking this pattern. And the thing is, it became our identity so long ago, so it just feels like who we are, so it feels like truth. It can feel like intuition. It can feel like self-awareness. But how many of you, like when you've started on this personal development or spiritual growth journey, that it's just like this constant fix it, and like, oh, now there's this thing to fix and this thing, and oh my God, I'm so fucked up, and that's the toxic shame underneath it all. So we want to really, have this beautiful sword of awareness that we cut through all of the conditioning and thought patterns, because it's not us. We were not born with this. And then we have this equally more powerful, or as powerful as this sort of awareness, we have this sort of truth, which includes self-compassion, because that's the medicine for this. We must be more committed to this deeper truth and this bringing this unconditional love to all of this, and commit to ourselves not to turn this against ourselves and go into a deeper spiral. You know, this toxic shame, it's a learned perception, it's an internalized voice, it's early messaging and programs. So for most of us, until you start seeing it, it just feels like reality, but it's not. Hi, Britt. Drazel. Yeah, unlearning things, you know, that are showing up in the marriage, totally. And Faz, yeah. You know, one thing that has been helpful over the past 20 years, remember the book, oh my gosh, The 4 Agreements, Don't Take Anything Personally. I remember when I read that, in that agreement, because I did, like, if somebody didn't call me back soon enough, or blah, 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 whatever, like in these very simple interactions, I took it all very personally. And so that was the first time where I was like, oh my God, it's not personal. It's not about me. Everyone has whatever they have going on. So that's helpful. Hi, Anne. And exactly, and this is what I teach in my coaching. You know, we come into the body, we come into the moment. You know, we can't heal in the future. Well, okay, outside of energy healing and things like that, I mean, if we're just working with more 3 dimensions right here and now, you can't do anything about, like, what's going to happen tomorrow. You can't do anything about, you know, yesterday. So how do you heal all this right now, here in this present moment, outside of all of our wonderful ethereal multidimensional healing tools? Oh yeah, flower essences, I love that you brought that in. Those can be very helpful. And so in my coaching with people, you know, I pause us and I like, let's breathe here. What is happening in your body right now? This is where we bring that beautiful sort of awareness, presence, now, and self-compassion, that powerful medicine. So you want to start noticing all of this first, and you're going to notice 1% of the time, whatever, that's fine. You know, or maybe 10%, whatever. There's no, I always talk about 2 to 5% more awareness, 2 to 5% shift. So start 2% noticing, becoming conscious of the voice. If you did something wrong, noticing when it says I am wrong. And I want you to start naming, there's that voice. We don't want to make the voice wrong, because that just brings more energy to it. We just want to be like, there's that voice again. There's the shame voice. And then you want to start separating what, like, reality versus your perception. So a great example, and this happened to me yesterday. I was on the lake, as I always am. My friend drove by on his bike, And he didn't stop, and he just said, hey, as he went by. And I had, the first reaction was, oh, he doesn't want to talk to me, blah, 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 blah. But immediately then I was like, oh, well, maybe he's having a bad day. Maybe he's in a hurry. Maybe he's going somewhere. Maybe he doesn't feel like talking. And then I'm like, how many times do I not feel like talking when I see somebody that I walk by? Right? So that shame voice tried to make it personal. And then I corrected, because I do this work. You know, but there was a hit of something, and that's the journey. You know, X number of time ago, you know, definitely before I read the 4 Agreements, I would have been like, oh my God, he hates me. What did I do? Blah, blah, blah. So there was an inkling of that, but then there was all of the new programming and new thoughts. So that's how our transformation goes. It's not this moment, blinding light, we forever are changed. I mean, that can happen. But for most of us, it's going to be what I just said. That you wake up, you have an old, you know, program run, and then how quickly does the new program kick in? The longer you do this work, the more quickly it'll kick in, the less there will be a charge on the trigger. So you want to name that voice. You want to separate what happened from the meaning you're putting on it. You want to pause. If you're in something with another person, you just want to notice, and you don't want to over-explain, you don't want to over-apologize, you don't want to over-fix, you don't want to withdraw, you don't want to be overly responsible. And then you want to be with yourself in your body and come back into the moment, come back into the body. You know, I did this yesterday with another situation as well. I put my hand on my heart and said, I'm here with you. I'm not going anywhere. I'm here with you, and I'm not going anywhere. That is powerful medicine, y'all. So stay with yourself. So you can name it, see it. You want to, you know, notice, externalize, not make it about your own voice. Reconnect with the wounded child part. I mean, that wounded child energy, like whatever, however you want to conceptualize it, the inner child is a very powerful and wonderful way to work with the wounds and the old trauma energies and all of that. So the shame formed when the inner child, or not when the inner child, when us as a child felt exposed, felt wrong for having needs, felt wrong for having emotions. Because then it's like, okay, the thing with my friend, oh, they didn't say hi. Oh, what's wrong with me? Oh, no, not take it personally. But the shame and judgment can still try and come in. You should be better than this by now. You've been on this journey so long. You think you're so spiritual, like whatever. I'm just making things up. But the shame voice can try and latch on. So you want to just be like, it's okay, sweetie, I'm here with you. I'm not going anywhere. You could even do one of my favorites, tell me all about it, sweetie. So, because really, little Natalie's feelings got hurt when her friend didn't say hi on the playground yesterday. Like, that's literally what happened. We're all just children here in adult bodies. So then I can be like, oh, sweetie, yeah, did that hurt your feelings? Tell me all about it. How did you feel? I mean, it didn't bother me enough to need to do that, But there can be situations where that occurs. And Madeline, it's time for you to have a voice. It's time for you to allow yourself to be angry, because that's the other thing. Hey, Jed, is that because of our childhood dynamics, we shut off anger and we just stuff it down, and then we can't even access anger anymore. And there definitely is healthy anger and healthy rage. As long as it's not turned inward and as long as it's expressed appropriately, most of us need to actually be more, emote more. And we want to learn to trust ourselves, right? Because as children in these toxic shame dynamics, well, we're gaslit. So, we cry. Oh, stop crying. You're making a big deal out of nothing. So then you're like, but wait a minute, I'm feeling all these things right now. And then you question your perception, and then you make yourself wrong. I am wrong. What's wrong with me? So we want to learn to rebuild self-trust, rebuild, trusting our inner guidance, our intuition, which is something else I work with people on, is following and trusting their inner guidance. Staying with yourself, not abandoning yourself to get approval. So it's just these small moments. So you can't heal shame by shaming the shame, okay? And this also goes, this happens, I see this often with the ego. It's like people will demonize the ego and, oh, that's just my ego, and I was in my ego, like it's a bad thing and I shouldn't be doing that. Or you get lost in your thoughts in meditation, or you're believing what you're thinking, and that's bad and wrong. So that's the toxic shame at play too. So we don't want to do this with those things, and we don't want to do that with, you're going to notice the shame come up now. So the shame is not bad. It was learned, it was conditioned. It was a protection, because we could not threaten our primary caregiver connection, because they kept us alive. So we had to turn it back on ourselves to keep that connection intact over everything else, so we could survive and not die. So it protected us, it helped us, and until it didn't, and it doesn't. So now's the time for the healing. So we just want to, you can say, thank you, shame. Thanks for sharing. Thank you, mind. Thank you, ego. Thank you, pain body. And just come back and be like, okay, thanks for sharing. I'm here now. Speak to the wounded part. I'm here with you now. Ooh, wonderful, Madeline. Boxing, how amazing. You're way ahead of the game then. Love it. So we treat all of this as a fact, because it's been an identity, and it's not. So you are not who shame told you that you are. It's not about becoming shameless overnight. It's about changing and stopping organizing your identity around all of this. And in the spiritual healing journey, it's so natural and easy for all of these wonderful self-awarenesses that we then, just the shame uses to further enforce shame. And then it's like no matter how much you grow, it's never enough and all of that. So we want to notice, thank the pattern for trying to help, and come back home to ourselves in the moment, parent that wounded part, which just means giving loving awareness, which means giving unconditional love. So let's all take a breath here. And if this resonates with you, as some of you know, I offer my very powerful visioning process where we can look at where this toxic shame keeps you stuck and then what to do. Where do you want to go? What would you do? What would you want to do if this wasn't running your life? So I offer that as a gift to those of you in this community. If you've never worked with me before or had a one-on-one, and if this is resonating, please follow that intuition and reach out. Awesome, Jeff. Yeah, I mean, you can acknowledge, we can acknowledge the shame for it was trying to help. That's something I talk about often too in my coaching, is like we want to say, well, what was the positive benefit of the pattern? We get something out of these things. There's something positive disguised in it somewhere. So we want to be like, thank you, and we're going to try something different now. So it's just, practicing, experimenting. The next moment you notice this come up, you're going to be aware of it now. That's, the powerful, wonderful awareness. And the practice is not letting shame weaponize your awareness or weaponize your spiritual journey. And when you notice that it does, just say, oh, thank you. Thanks for trying to help. I'm going to do something else. So if this was helpful, please give me a follow. You can give a donation if you would like. That helps me to continue to be with you in this way. Stay tuned. If you follow me, you can see my live streams coming up for April. I will schedule those soon. And if you liked the topics I've been diving into, I've been doing some different sort of live streams on relationship dynamics and toxic relationship cycles. We did trauma bonding the other day. We've done attachment styles, things like that, doing toxic shame. Let me know, and I will keep those coming. You can follow me on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. This is also going to be, it's live streaming on YouTube now and will also be in my replays over there. So you can check all of that out along with all my offerings here in Insight Timer. I also do have my new Etsy store that some of you may have heard about, where I have created many digital resources for toxic relationship healing that are very powerful to help you work through and dive into healing from toxic relationship dynamics. So you can check that out. You can send me a message if you'd like that information. It's all in my profile here in Insight Timer in the link if you click on the About Me section. So thank you, Deirdre, for the donation. Nancy, Madeline, wonderful. Thank you so much. Jed, definitely. I hope you all have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world. And I will see you all very soon. Oh, one more thing. I do have a meditation here I can't share it directly because they only allow you to share the premium tracks, but it's a free track, and I can't remember the exact name of it, but it's about healing shame. So if you go in my free tracks, there's one about healing shame. So definitely check that out too. It's very powerful. I got the practice from Gay Hendricks, who is a very wise author and teacher. So, and if you want the link to it, you can also send a message. So I will see you all soon. Thank you. I have to go now at this moment, Catherine. That's a wonderful idea. And as I said, I wish I could share it with you. Let me just look up the name at least so I can tell you that. Transmuting Shame in the Body. So if you scroll a bit down into my tracks, Transmuting Shame in the Body, very powerful meditation. So yeah, if I would have remembered this before the end of the live, we would have definitely done it. Maybe next time I do a live, because there will be more lives on this topic. I feel like this is very under talked about. People don't talk about shame because it's shameful. So, there's a big potential for healing in addressing this and talking about it. So, yeah, next time. Thank you, Catherine. You're welcome, J.E. So, I will see you all soon. Much love and namaste.